President Obama had agreed to take in 10,000 people fleeing Syria's brutal civil war and violent rise of ISIS.
More than 700,000 Syrians have already reached Europe seeking refuge and asylum, but reports that one of the Paris attackers was a Syrian jihadist who had traveled to Europe hiding among legitimate refugees has raised fears that ISIS is placing agents among the refugees.
And of course, that prompted the House of Representatives to vote Thursday in favor of a bill that prevents Syrian refugees from entering the U.S. until they've been thoroughly screened.
Congressman L.C. Hastings voted against that bill. He is a Democrat from Broward who represents the 20th Congressional District. Congressman Carlos Curbelo voted in favor of the bill restricting the flow of refugees. He is a Republican. He represents the 26th Congressional District, much of southwest Miami-Dade and the Keys. Gentlemen, great to have you come in this morning.
Thank you. Good being with you.
Congressman Curbelo, you voted for this, as we said. Why did you? Why do you believe it's necessary?
Michael, I believe we need to help these refugees, and I have been talking about this for months. What we have voted for in the House is to pause the program, to make sure that our law enforcement agencies have all the resources they need to vet these refugees and to get the FBI involved. We know the FBI is very good at background checks.
Are they not involved in the vetting that's going on right now?
Well, this gives them an official role in the process, and by the way, in large part, it's a response to Director Comey's comments that we cannot fully vet a lot of these refugees. So we want to help the refugees, but we want to make sure we keep the homeland safe at the same time.
Can I just clarify what my understanding in reading the bill is the vetting process doesn't change. There are just 3 people who need to now sign off of it. Homeland Security Secretary, the FBI Director, and the Director of National Intelligence. 3 signatures.
That's right.
Is what changes.
We don't want this to just be a bureaucratic decision. We want it to be a leadership decision, and we want the administration to go on the record saying that if we let the refugees in, which I think we ultimately should, that the American people are going to be safe, and that none of these refugees are like the terrorist who allegedly came through the refugee trail in Paris.
All right, Congressman Hastings, as you well know, Syrians who already are in the pipeline takes 18 to 24 months for them to get through the screening process. This would add even more time for them to be screened, wouldn't it?
It effectively shuts the program down. I understand my colleagues' views, but he didn't say how we got into this. First off, the process stunk. Let me just be blunt about it. And what happened is it did not go through what we call regular order. There were no hearings. There was no markup. It just came out of the blue. 6 committees of jurisdiction evidently put it together with the new Speaker of the House, and it was brought to the Rules Committee. I raised substantial sand about that. But the simple fact of the matter is there are 2,184 Syrian refugees in the United States of America today. All of them were vetted by either 2 years or 3 years for some, including about 20 that were scheduled to be in the United States that were rejected by some of the governors. Please understand this. Not one of those people that has been in the United States that period of time has committed anything near a crime. Not to mention the number of other immigrants. Remember this, 53 million immigrants have come to the United States of America since 1965. The 786,000 people that have come here during the Syrian period, only 3 have been charged with anything related to terrorism. This is crazy.
I will say, I agree with Elsie that the process to bring the bill to the floor was not ideal, but I think the legislation is reasonable, and the proof is in the fact that 47 Democrats, who had met, by the way, with the White House Chief of Staff and with Jay Johnson, the Secretary of Homeland Security, voted with Republicans. We actually got a veto-proof majority in the House of Representatives. Now it goes to the Senate, and again, you know, we are a community that's full of refugees in South Florida. I want to make that point. We need to help these refugees. We just want to make sure that none of them are coming here to hurt us.
Michael and Glenna, I know you want to get in this, but let's localize this for a minute. Michael, you and I have been involved with Haitian and Cuban refugees for a substantial period of time. I issued the order that allowed 22,000 Haitians to have work permits in the United States of America when I was a judge. I issued the order that allowed fishermen and others who own boats that were Cubans to go to Cuba when Carter said that they could pick up their refugees. You're looking at the guy that entered that order. And I did so proudly. There's absolutely no reason for the grandstanding that went on last week. It's pure, unadulterated political rank politics, and it's wrong.
All right, we are going to hold on, Congressman. We're going to take just a brief pause because I've been told by our producer that there is I believe, a tornado watch has been issued, and Jennifer Correa is standing by.
We're back talking about the U.S. response to Syrian refugees with Congressman Alcee Hastings and Carlos Curbelo. And just to follow up on what we were talking about in the last segment, I think the biggest concern that we're hearing that this is the SAFE Act is a response that's more political than practical, is that the concerns that all of the people involved in the Paris attacks were citizens there. They were not Syrian refugees. And to the Congressman's point, there has been no Syrian refugee or any other refugee here that has perpetrated an act of terror. And so what makes this not political?
Right. Well, that's why we're not canceling the program. We're just asking for the program to be paused and for the government to go on record certifying that these people are not going to be threats to the homeland.
Carlo, can you certify that your next door neighbor isn't going to commit harm at some point in the future?
Alcee, that's far different from this terrorist threat. The American people are scared, and some are ridiculing the American people for being fearful, for being concerned. These are legitimate concerns. The President of the United States is out there ridiculing those who are concerned about this, when in reality, if we really cared about the Syrian people, what we would do is defeat and destroy ISIS, something the President has refused to commit to.
Then put your plan on the board.
That is the ultimate
Put your plan on the board without just saying it.
It's an authorization of use for military force that will give the President every tool to defeat ISIS, and one that he does not want.
Answer me this question. Why is it that Iraq is included in this particular legislation? The Iraqi situation is one where we have had a significant number of Iraqi refugees to come here. But that isn't mentioned by my colleague, that Iraq is also part of it. And then let me go a step further. Why not Sudan? Why not Yemen? Why not Nigeria, where Boko Haram has been taken? Why not Mali now? Are we going to go back next week and we're going to say that people from Mali can't come here? How about Libya? I could go on and on and on.
The world changed after 9/11. The world changed again after the Paris attacks.
Yeah.
A lot of people are concerned, and a lot of Democrats joined Republicans to support this reason.
Who also panicked and were hysterical. And I was there. I saw them. And it's shameful. It's against our values. It's against everything that this country stands for. Nicholas Kristof in today's New York Times says the Statue of Liberty must be crying.
At
the end of the line, just one more point, please. We are the country that most supports refugees in the world. We invest millions and millions of dollars. We should not tell our people that all of a sudden we're not being generous and that we're rejecting these refugees. We're not. We're putting a pause in the process, and by the way, we're going to continue spending billions through the UN to help these refugees wherever they are.
Just for point of stopping the process. It's not pausing.
Information.
Yeah. Oh, you all are here, are you?
Vaguely.
We're not a potted palm.
Just a point of information, how South Florida, the congressional South Florida delegation voted along party lines.
How did they?
Ileana Ros-Lehtinen and Mario Diaz-Balart. Congressman Curbelo voted for it. Debbie Wasserman Schultz, Lois Frankel, Congressman Hastings, Ted Deutsch, and Frederica Wilson voted against, but Gwen Graham and Patrick Murphy, Democrats of Florida, voted for. Sure. What do you make of that?
What I make of it is people worried about their own politics and thinking because of the fear in this country. Let me make it very clear. There is a legitimate reason to be concerned about terrorism. But there is a greater reason than what we just did to be concerned about visa waivers and student waivers. The people that blew down the Twin Towers, each one of them were here on a waiver or tourist.
Oh,
I see. Well, I'll be there when you move it.
What is legislation?
It's essentially going to impose some restrictions to the visa waiver program because, as Alcee says, a lot of the people who have done harm to this country arrived here legally, and we need to take a look at that as well.
All right, Congressman Hastings, I need to ask you this. The President has said, President Obama several times after these horrific attacks in Paris, condemned them, but said, we have a plan to attack ISIS. We've got a coalition. We'll form a broader coalition, but we've got a plan and we're sticking to it. Now, among others, I saw Peggy Noonan, the wonderful writer, Wall Street Journal columnist, former Reagan speechwriter, said in her column yesterday in the Wall Street Journal that the president is wrong and he's irrelevant. What do you think?
I think that the president has not acted as I would have acted in many respects. When he commented the day before the Paris attacks that ISIS was contained, obviously it demonstrably was shown to him that it was not. But there's a bigger issue going on here. At the United Nations, day before yesterday, the French and the Russians offered a resolution to form that kind of coalition and condemn what transpired. Interestingly, Russia did not proceed with their resolution and supported the French resolution, which is unusual because they and China normally veto, but they didn't.
Putin wants to, is that the signal that you see, Congressman, that even Vladimir Putin wants to get on board? I mean, it was, after all, the airliner. It was blown up. ISIS says, we put the bomb on that plane.
It is clear that the President of the United States, his administration, from the beginning did not take ISIS seriously. There was a major point of inflection in 2013 when Bashar al-Assad used chemical weapons against his own people. At that time, I was running for Congress. It was not a popular position, but I said the United States must act. Why? Because we drew a red line, and we said that that would not be allowed. The President of the United States dithered, sent the message that the United States does not care about what's happening in Syria, and I think that is why we are where we are today. That's why it bothered me so much to hear the President attack Republicans and Democrats who supported this legislation, saying that we didn't care about the Syrians, that we were mean, that we weren't thoughtful, yet he stood idle while Syrians were gassed by their own leader, who is a head of state recognized by the United Nations. That was a low point in U.S. policy, and had we not acted irresponsibly at that point, maybe we wouldn't even be having this conversation.
I guess we could, my mom used to say that we could always go back. I guess we kind of ignored the fact that Iraq was left with the void that these people filled.
And probably the Iraq invasion was a mistake as well.
Is there a legitimate question about intelligence? A couple of the presidential candidates, the poll toppers, are both saying we should go back to the enhanced interrogation, which a lot of people considered torture. Is there something about U.S. intelligence that should be attended to? Because that's the proactive, not the reactive.
Yes, remember something about intelligence, and I served 8 years on that committee over a period of 10 years. You don't know what you don't know. And to argue that there's a need for enhancement of intelligence, particularly coming from either Donald Trump or Ben Carson or some of those leaders, what we need in this country is for us to recognize that it is a time for us to be serious. And whatever this garbage is that these people are talking needs to be thrown in the garbage can.
All right. Before we run out of time, Congressman Curbelo and Congressman Hastings, I need to ask you, there are about 2,000 Cuban migrants who are stuck in Costa Rica. They can't get across the Nicaraguan border. And thanks to the generosity of private individuals and the Lions Club and other people, they are in and they have some shelter. But this just cannot go on. Now, you've written a letter to the White House. What do you want the administration to do?
Well, last week, before I did that, I met with a Costa Rican ambassador, and we asked him to please make sure that these people are taken care of and that they are treated humanely. And Costa Rica is being very responsible and charitable with those Cubans. But I wrote a letter to the White House that was preceded by a meeting with the White House over a month ago on this spike in Cuban refugees. Right. Since the administration announced its new Cuba policy in December of last year, there has been a 78% increase in Cubans fleeing the island. This has been a quiet crisis that has been building, and now everyone knows about it because of this border dispute between Costa Rica and Nicaragua. This is a serious issue. I have asked the administration for answers. What are they going to do? Who are they talking to? And also, this is an issue that shows that we need to reform our immigration policy towards
and maybe
Cuba
the Cuban Adjustment Act and wet foot, dry foot.
I favor exactly what Carlos said, and perhaps he and I can legislate with reference to the Cubans that are in Costa Rica. But know this, we have always stood for freedom in this country. Our principles allow and our values allow that we are the beacon of freedom. Toward that end, I would only urge that all of us take a deep breath and get on about the business of ensuring the security of America and the rights of this country's citizenry.
Seems like the perfect last word.
I think that is the last word, and a very good one. Congressman Hastings, Congressman Curbelo.
Thank you all. Thanks, Carlo.
And as a matter of fact, when we come back, we are going to have a live report right there from Costa Rica, where those thousands of Cubans are stalled in their quest to get to the U.S.
Local 10's Handela is in Costa Rica. He will join us live next.